Hi everyone, I'm Luana Grant and welcome to another week of Media Ring Yarning. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all watching from today, wherever that might be around our country, and pay my respect to all elders past, present and emerging from my people, the Wiradjuri and Arrernte people. So this week, I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Head of Nextdoor Australia, Jennie Sager. Hi
Hello.
Jennie,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks so much for your time. For all the viewers out there, can you tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Gosh, I'll try not that could be a really long-winded question. I'll try not to go on too long about that. But I guess the abbreviated version is I'm obviously from the US. I'm originally from New York. I started working in television in the US, where I worked for pretty much every major network you could think of, everyone from National Geographic and Discovery to MTV and ABC, NBC, CBS, Warner Brothers, kind of all of the big ones.
Everywhere.
I first came, and sorry, that was always on the production side, so mostly as an
Mhm.
executive producer and director. And I came to Australia for the first time. My gosh, it was 2003, so about 17 years ago. And I came here not knowing anybody, and just took a chance. I always wanted to live in another country, and went to work at Channel 9 straight away, where I spent 4 years doing a variety of shows there, and then went to work for a lot of different production companies in Australia as well. I eventually moved back to the US, where I went back to New York City and continued to work in television there for about 6 or 7 years, and actually had no plans on coming back to Australia. But then, surprise, I did again about 7 years ago, and went back to TV initially. And at that time, this was when kind of social media was really starting to take off. And I remember sitting in meetings, sitting around with executives talking about which shows should be renewed. And there was this question around certain shows that the ratings weren't so great necessarily, but the conversation on social media was amazing. You know, they were trending
Mhm.
every week. There was a lot of engagement around clips and just conversation on the platforms, just specifically around those shows, where we actually started renewing shows, not just based on ratings, but based off of the conversation they were generating, the buzz they were generating on social media. And I
Mhm.
sat in enough of those meetings to finally think, I really should get my head around the other side, which that point in time was kind of viewed as the dark side. And I went and I accepted a position at Twitter, where originally I was the head of entertainment content at Twitter, which meant I got to work with all of the TV networks and production companies and execute partnerships in that space. And over the years, that grew to where I eventually took on an executive role where I oversaw all of Asia Pacific. So that was about 9 different countries: Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, India, Australia, Singapore, China, all of the big markets throughout Asia Pacific, and oversaw our team there. And we were also responsible for revenue related to entertainment content and, high level partnerships. And then about a year and a half ago, I made another switch where I took the job at Nextdoor, which was starting in Australia. And one of the main reasons why I made that switch was I just felt like I really wanted to give back, and I really wanted to work for a company that had a purpose that just really aligned with my own personal values. Not that
Right.
Peter didn't do that, but I
Mhm.
just really wanted to work somewhere where I felt like I was making a positive difference in the world on a day-to-day basis. And that's how I ended up where I am now.
Awesome. Well, you definitely have a lot of experience in the industry with, all the work that you've done, but you are also one of our directors on the Media Ring board. What attracted you to want to join the board, and what practical change did you want to make and see in the industry by being a board member and director?
Yeah, I think that all of my roles, one common thread in all of them is that I was always giving this voice to lesser heard communities. So I worked on a large amount of documentaries and kind of observational documentary programs that focused around just minority cultures or challenged individuals. And they're really these voices that you typically wouldn't hear from. And they were kind of the voices that struggled to be heard in
Mm.
societies. And so I think that's always been a passion point of mine. And then when I first moved to Australia and learned more about the indigenous population, I mean, that is exactly the situation. It's a population that's always struggling to get their voices heard. And so if
Mhm.
I can be a part of an organization that is not only aiming to expand opportunities for that sector of the population, but also to help them give a voice, then that's a great opportunity.
Mm. And as the head of Nextdoor, can you explain how the organization works and what you do in the Indigenous space, in diversity, and also around Black Lives Matter at this moment?
Absolutely. So, Nextdoor, for people that aren't familiar with it, is a free app. So, the whole purpose of Nextdoor is to cultivate a kinder world where everybody has a neighborhood to rely on. So, we're very different to any other kind of networking platform where we connect you based on hyperlocality. So, you join the platform and you're connected to people that live in your same neighborhood. So, if you live in Redfern, you're connected to people that only also live in Redfern. And then what we define as your nearby neighborhoods, which is almost like a surrounding circle of your neighborhood. 100% of those users are name and address verified. So you know that you're talking to a real person who definitely lives there. It can't be a bot. It can't be someone who lives in another country. And
Mhm.
so what we find is that really creates a high level of trust and accountability because you can't be a keyboard warrior who, trolls somebody because your name and your address is actually out there. Everybody knows where you
Yeah.
live. And so by nature, people just lend a helping hand more, they trust each other more. And we see this incredible community where people are giving back, all of the time, helping each other out, whether that's chores, in each other's houses, or during COVID-19, it was dropping supplies off to each other, or just checking in on a neighbor, whether virtually or on the phone or in person, if that was allowed. There's a big use case around organizing community events and also community activism. So people find each other and kind of rally around a community cause. And there's also a lot of cultural groups that form. So we see a lot of people using our groups functionality to form, again, cultural groups or interest-based groups, or just simply groups where they're looking for other like-minded people.
Mhm.
So how that relates to the indigenous population, we actually give them an easy way to connect with each other when they might not know each other. So if you think of other platforms, you join up and you find somebody by typing their name in. So you have to already know that person. What's
Mhm.
different about Nextdoor is we give you a way to meet those people near you without knowing who they are. So you're finding people that you can connect with in your area, but you don't have to know their name to find them. So it really brings you closer together. We have actually built into our quarterly KPIs and our quarterly, missions and goals every single time to increase diversity and inclusivity on our platform. So, to give an example, last quarter we started working with the Refugee Council of Australia, where we want to make sure that immigrant population that moves to Australia really lands in a positive and welcoming environment, and that we encourage them to just lean on each other and foster new connections, and while also educating just Australians that are already here. And so we're really doing that and making an effort to do that in the indigenous space as well. As far as Black Lives Matter and the platform in general, we take a very, very clear stance that there is no place for hate or for racism on the platform. We have very clear community guidelines that explain that, and everything we do in the product and that we're continuously working on in the product helps foster that kindness and positivity. And we're continuing to work on that every single day. And I don't think anyone's gotten it 100% right yet, but we're certainly
Mhm.
working on it every single day. And look, again, we make it very, very clear that if you violate those guidelines, you're not going to be welcome on the platform, because we are fostering a kind and positive place that should be a warm welcome for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. And do you have any figures of how many Indigenous people are on the app or
We
part of
don't
Nextdoor?
Well, we don't ask for, ethnicity or anything like that when you
Mhm.
join. We actually track everything on a neighborhood level. So what we look at are metrics of where you live, essentially. So again, we don't ask for any sort of ethnicity demographics when you join the platform. But what we do look at is neighborhoods that pop up. And we've
Mhm.
seen some really great traction where I remember we had last year, we had this neighborhood pop up in far north Queensland where I was like, where is this? I've never heard of this before. And then I Googled it, and it was this really small Aboriginal community in far
Oh,
north
wow.
that I think had population of like 50 or 60, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
And I don't even know how they found out about us, but they had started using Nextdoor to communicate with each other.
Oh,
So
that's so good.
it's we hope that that will just continue to happen. And again, we'd love for that to happen at a quicker rate, but we do love
Mm.
seeing those communities pop up.
That's great. For any Indigenous person keen to work in the sector, film, TV, or even in the tech sector, what do you think? Like, where do you think they should start, and what advice do you have for people looking to get work right now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to be cognizant of. One is everybody is struggling at the moment and looking for more work and looking for ways to earn extra income at the moment. And so I just want to say, like, keep the faith and keep pressing on, because it's a tough time for everybody, and the way that it is right now will not be how it will always be. So definitely don't get discouraged and keep the faith. I think it's important to think out of the box. A lot of times when we think of media opportunities, we think traditionally in the space of TV and film. And now
Mm.
there are so many opportunities. TikTok just opened an office in Australia, Netflix,
Oh, wow.
Twitter, Facebook, YouTube,
Mm.
Instagram, Nextdoor. Like, there are so many digital platforms that have a home base in Australia right now. And there are also at every single big company, if you think of, Vodafone, Optus, all of these big companies, they now have content teams. So gone are the days when if you wanted to work in the content space, you had to work for a TV network or a production company. Like, now you can
Mm.
work at pretty much any major business and work on their content team. So I
Yeah.
think people really need to get in the habit of, when you're looking for those opportunities, don't just look in that traditional sector.
Definitely look outside the box and think bigger.
Absolutely. I had a friend who actually just recently took a job producing content for Goldman Sachs, which is
Mhm.
a big financial company. So again, all of these major global companies, but also local companies like ANZ, Westpac, Commonwealth Bank, healthcare companies, they all have these digital and content teams where experience in production and experience in that sector is exactly what they're looking for.
That's great advice, even for me. How has Nextdoor been dealing with COVID, and like what changes have your organization had to make?
Yeah, so COVID's been really interesting for us, because in times of crisis, people actually tend to turn to their local communities and to those
Mm.
closest to them. So, what we saw during the bushfires was we actually saw tremendous growth as a platform, both in signups to Nextdoor, but also just in conversation and engagement. And that happened tenfold during COVID. I mean, we had 91% month over month growth in April, and we had about a 237% increase in conversation on the platform. And that was because, again, like, people feel like it's a safe and trusted place where they can lend that helping hand, because it is private and local to your neighborhood. So people were using it to help each other out with supplies. Some of those
Toilet
serious,
paper.
yeah, some of them serious things like medicines, but then
Mm.
other, just kind of kind examples. Like, even for myself, I posted something about I love baking, and I posted something about how I couldn't find yeast in any stores, and did anyone know where I could find yeast? And then a neighbor who I never met before said, "Oh, I'm coming over. I just left some in your mailbox." And she
Oh,
left me
that's so
a box
nice.
of yeast with a cute little note on it that said "Happy Baking." And I've never met her, And so this happens
Yeah,
every single day in Australia
that's
on Nextdoor.
awesome.
We're actually in the middle of a global loneliness study that we've just executed with Swinburne University in Melbourne, that's
Mhm.
looking at how little neighborly actions like saying hello to someone you don't know can actually help combat loneliness and social isolation in Australia and around the
Yeah,
world. So
100%. Especially at this time when everyone's had to stay at home. Not everyone, lives with their family. A lot of people do live alone. So you do get that feeling of you're not just isolated, but you are very much by yourself because you don't have that interaction except for the people, I guess, that you live next to or in your street.
absolutely. And we saw people doing fun things too, like organizing Zoom calls with their neighbors, just saying, "Hey, let's all meet each other now that we're stuck at
Mm.
home." Or people offering up their skills, like, I'm a magician. These are all true examples, by the way. Who wants to tune in and watch me teach you magic tricks? So people were just being
That's so cool.
safe with that as well. But one thing
Mm,
that we're seeing now that we're at the other side, which is also good for this audience to know, is people are finding a lot of work on Nextdoor. So if you're out of work and you're looking for just some quick cash and odd jobs, we've seen a lot of people from the arts and entertainment sector who are posting, hey, I'm usually somebody who works in tour production for concerts, and I've been stood down. Like, does anyone need any help, fixing stuff around the house? Or here's what I can do,
mm.
listing their skills, and their neighbors are just hiring them time and time again. So again, like, think outside of the box of where you can put yourself out there. I've seen a lot of people offering up web skills and social media skills for free that have been stood down or made redundant, or sorry, not for free, for cheaper rates. And so there's an opportunity right now to think about what skills you have and get them out there. And even if it's just an extra $200 there or $100 there, it all adds up, and it's still cash in your pocket right now while you're looking for something else long term.
Yeah, definitely. That's very, very good advice. Jenny, we'll leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to chat to you. And everyone, join us next week for more Media Ring Yarning. Thank you.